Israel's ground invasion of Gaza has begun, but how far into the strip have they gotten? And where is the fighting heaviest? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's October 29th, 2023. This is your daily unbiased Israel-Hamas conflict update. Let's get into it. Okay, taking a look at the news in the last 24 hours. First off, as of about 4 hours ago, we have confirmed Israeli forces are inside Gaza from at least some of these YouTube videos posted here. By most accounts, the most verified information has Israeli forces moving south along this strip here, likely along this roadway with at least an armored column. This is likely a tactical decision to create what I imagine is probably like a support by fire position, simply because any forces moving along here don't have to worry about the sea. Israeli forces are almost certainly in control of the waters here. We've seen the Israeli Navy doing an effective job of screening out Hamas forces that try to circumvent through the water. And so what this means is that these tank forces can concentrate their fire effectively. Their security demands are reduced by 50%, right? They can focus entirely to the north and to the east. And provide not only, if in the case of armored columns, direct and indirect fire support to other forces operating in and around the Gaza Strip. Bear in mind, guys, the Gaza Strip is not that wide. It's only about maybe 4 kilometers, which is so you could have a modern main battle tank here can actually reach out and provide fire support all the way to the other side of the strip. Now, is that a great idea for a tank? No. The ability to deliver precise fires depends a lot on like geography and stuff. But the theoretical idea that you've created this support by fire column here, and then it's going to provide fire support all to the other forces moving is definitely likely, because by other accounts, we've heard that about yesterday, there were heavy clashes in and around this Beit Hanun in northeastern Gaza, including gunfire, tanks, artillery strikes. I'm always skeptical about civilians' ability to distinguish artillery strikes from tank. But about 9 hours ago, the fighting apparently continuing, heavy airstrikes, heavy strikes along the border. And they said actually during the daylight, the clashes were heavier than at night, which makes sense because Hamas doesn't appear to have access to night vision, not at scale, whereas the Israeli military likely does have a large amount of night vision devices that they're able to bring to bear. So Israeli military forces likely primarily focusing their offense at night when they have an advantage, especially given the fact that they've cut off power to Gaza, plunging the strip into darkness as they conduct their operation. And then when day breaks, that's probably when you're going to see Hamas engage in their offensive operations. Again, as a norm, usually it's done at the most heavily as night transitions to day. That's because it can be tough sometimes. You put away your night vision devices, but then as the daylight kind of breaks, your vision's kind of iffy. And so it can be a little tough to target and maneuver in that sort of low light environment. And that's probably, at least if I were Hamas and I didn't have night vision and I had to engage the Israeli forces, that's likely what I would do. Again, I don't think it's a great idea for Hamas to engage them in this open area anyway. This is where Israeli forces are at their best. Likely these are kind of delaying tactics, and that the bulk of the Hamas forces, if they're operating in the way that other Iranian-trained irregular forces operate, they're likely building defensive positions in houses and sites in and around the urban areas of Gaza. Everything else here is simply a delaying action or a probing action. At least that's my thesis. Of course, Hamas definitely prone to making mistakes just like anyone else, but I think that's probably a key aspect of their strategy. Again, if they're following the playbook of Iranian-backed militias that we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, as you can see, the level of strikes continuing as you see the Israelis push southward or southwest, you're going to see the sort of iron curtain, so to speak, of airstrikes start to slide their way back. And this is, of course, because these are not preparatory airstrikes. These are not static targets. These are likely airstrikes in support of these ground forces. So if tanks, for example, take an RPG from a building, the Israeli forces, they're likely to call in an airstrike on that building, and the airstrike will engage it if the distance is too great, or for operational terrain reasons, it can't be engaged with direct fire. Again, direct fire or artillery forces. So that's probably what we're seeing right now. Again, reporting is really, really sketchy because both the internet in Gaza has been largely cut, as well as the fact that the Israeli military is not going to disclose things like casualty numbers this early in the operation. You can see here that according to War Mapper, this is as of midnight, or at least midnight UTC on the 29th, or the morning of the 29th, basically, you have only a few kilometers of incursions into Gaza, right? This says that Beit Hanun, this is the area here. Let's see if we can make this a little bit larger. Yeah, there we go. That's what I want. Okay, so you can see here's the town of Beit Hanun. Israeli forces, it says, pushing along this axis here, encountering some resistance. If this is true, this is like what we talked about yesterday, where you have Israeli or Hamas forces are going to target Israeli forces as they move through the border fence, because it's a natural choke point, right? It's going to, once Israel has all these armored forces, they're going to create these small openings in the border fence, right? And then they're going to have to move all their armored forces through it. So before the fence, they're deployed out. Let's get this angle right. Before the fence, they're all deployed out here. Then they narrow into this narrow column. Think of it like the movie 300, right? You narrow this big, robust forces, but when you narrow them into a small pass or a bridge, they're not as effective. They don't have the broad sort of area of fire to engage in. And then once they're through, they can fan back out and create a larger volume of fire. So the key is to catch your opponent at that natural choke point. That's likely what Hamas is trying to do in Beit Hanun. It's an urban area, like we talked about, very suitable to their defenses, and there's a lot of points that probably overlook these areas of the border fence. There's no such developed area here. You can kind of, like we talked about, this is a great area for a support by fire operation, because there's not many places that Hamas can actually sit and use as cover. It's very, very open, and you don't want to fight tanks in the open. Just believe me. And if you've been on any of my Ukraine content, you don't need me to tell you that. So that's probably why we're seeing at least this initial invasion having these shorter delays right now, right? They're focusing on getting support by fire positions set up so that they can then go in and start to clear these urban areas. This is where the fighting is going to get really intense. And that's probably what they want now. They want like a foothold within Gaza, and then they're going to start to really go deep into these very dense urban areas. And you're going to see that's where Hamas is going to really try to bring the fight to the Israelis. That's where they're at their best. They've fortified these positions. They've built these tunnel networks. They have they have pre-planned their fires, and it's hard when you have an armored mechanized force, your armored personnel carriers, your tanks. They can't operate in these spaces. I mean, look at how dense and winding these roads are. You probably couldn't get a Merkava in half of these if you wanted to. So it's going to be house to house, troop to troop, really dense, very intense clearing operations. Very, very difficult. And you can just see how dense and absolutely difficult it's going to be for the Israeli forces to clear. Because remember, their objective is to take out everyone who works for Hamas, right? So they're going to be searching for a needle in a haystack. And I don't believe, based on my experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, that they understand how almost impossible this is going to be. And the troubling thing is, right, the thing they rely on most, their chief advantage in dismantling any network. This is how the U.S. Navy SEALs and Delta Force guys would do it in Iraq and Afghanistan, is intelligence. Problem is, we know that there's already a massive intelligence failure because October 7th happened, right? So clearly Hamas is able to thwart Israeli intelligence. We know that. And so the idea that Israeli intelligence is going to have really good data, really good insight into the disposition and composition of Hamas forces inside the Gaza Strip, I think a healthy level of skepticism is appropriate. Anyway, guys, if you want to see my analysis of the actual combat footage from this fighting, it's going to be dropping on Tuesday at combatvetnews.com. You know, sponsors do not like my content. Patreon won't let me cover this war. So I have my own version. If you want to support me and you appreciate what I do, keep me independent, right? Not that sponsors are exactly knocking on my door. Check us out, right? Any one of these tiers will get you access to the members only section. And it's the best way to support the channel and keep me and the team independent in doing this. So anyway, thanks so much, guys. Thanks to our Colonel tier members at Combat Vet News. Thanks to the Lieutenant tier members. Please hit like and subscribe. Tell the algorithm that I'm making good content because I try not to be, I don't have a side. I just want to give you guys the information you need to make, if you're going to have an opinion, let it be a well-informed opinion. That's what I'm here to do. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.